Hi, I'm Terry Hill. We're in New Orleans at the Airbrush Getaway, and I'm going to show you how to paint on a black shirt. It's probably one of the biggest problems we have as airbrush artists is the people who come into our store and say, well, I just don't like to wear those light colored shirts, or my husband works on the car a lot and he'll just dirty up this shirt. If you paint it on a light colored shirt, he has to have a black shirt. It can be very time consuming to paint on black. It takes a lot of extra paint, it takes a lot of your time, and sometimes you can actually lose money accepting a black shirt as an order. Sometimes you may have 20, 30 people lined up at your counter begging for shirts, and then somebody slips a black one in there, and you could have painted 3 of the regular shirts in the time it takes to paint one of the black ones. So I'm going to show you the way I paint on black, and it's a little bit involved, but it gives you as good a color as I think you're going to get on black, and in the fastest way. I'm going to show you 2 things. I'm going to show you how to paint a beach scene on black, and then I'm going to show you how to paint a chrome script name, which I think is the simplest thing to do on black to get people out of your way. It's just if they want just a name, fine, do this chrome script name, and I think that'll save you some money and get these people out of your hair. Let's start out with this beach scene in the front. Now we got to defeat this black. The only way to do it is with white, so we just go ahead and we put some white on the shirt. Don't have to be very neat about it. Just take your airbrush, pull the needle back a little bit out of the back, just open it out so you get this airbrush real open, you can get a big volume of paint out, and just put it to it. Just try to keep it confined in the area that you're going to be painting the actual scene. You might want to wear a respirator to do this because there's a lot of paint that gets in the air. And I know I'm saying do as I say, not as I do, but for your health, wear a respirator. Okay, we'll stop it about there and take a look at how much fuzz is on this shirt. It's everywhere. Well, you got to knock that down so you get out your black. You'd be surprised at how quick the fuzz goes away. I do this in 2 stages. 3 stages actually. Put a little bit of white on, get rid of all the fuzz, and then I'll turn over to my heat press. And I'll set this paint, but I won't fully set it, just enough just to dry it and lay this fuzz down. Now, I'm pressing this with the shirt still on the shirt board. I do this a lot because it speeds the time up. But in order to do this, you have to leave a gap between the platen and the bottom part so that you can squeeze, of course the width of this shirt's a little thicker. So I open the press up a little bit so that I can do this. And I press it just long enough to lay that nap down.
What's the heat setting on your press, Terry?
It's at about 375 degrees. The heat setting. We move back over to the easel now. Get the wrinkles out of the shirt, tuck the sleeves behind your board, and go for round 2. We're going to put another layer of white on this shirt. I have a few wrinkles over here that I need to stretch out. You got to watch for that. Black shirts are harder to paint, but once they are painted, they're some of the prettiest shirts. That contrast of the stark black shirt and the paint is really pleasing. Then I'll go back to the heat press and I'll press this again. If you don't have a heat press, you could just have a blow dryer. That would help, but the blow dryer wouldn't lay the nap of the shirt back down. The heat press really helps. You could probably use a hand iron, but you don't even have to do that. This is just the best way to do it to make it smooth. Okay? Now, we'll go ahead and put up this stencil that I used to cover up the beach. This is called a cover-up. It's a cover-up stencil. Spray the back of it with an adhesive. All this does is keep the beach nice and white. Then we'll just come in here and do a beach scene. Do a wave on this. Nice clouds. I'm going to do kind of a daylight looking scene, like broad daylight. You know, a lot of people do sunsets. But this one's going to be a middle of the day scene. Say like it's 12 o'clock noon and you're sitting at the beach having lunch. This is about what you'd see. This is a light blue, so the same opaque sky blue. The first one, no, the first one wasn't opaque. The first one was a transparent. This one doesn't have to be opaque. We've got this white down here. It's not necessary. You know, you mentioned opaques. Opaque is an important thing to talk about here. They make paint these days that you can paint on these shirts that's opaque, and opaque means it covers another color. There's opaque and then there's transparent paints, and transparents are, just as it implies, transparent. You can see through the paint to see whatever other color that you're working over. You can use all opaque colors without going through some of this white process. But you don't get the same brilliance that you get when working with transparents. And that's why I choose to use the transparents in most cases. Okay, I'm going to go back to that first color. Just darken this in a little bit more. When you're doing a wave, remember that the water is thicker at the bottom of the wave, so it's going to be darker. In the back, the sunlight's shining through it, so it's going to be a little bit more transparent, so it'll be lighter as it goes up. So that nice gradual tone up. Okay, I'll go to black and just use it really lightly, just kind of fog it in, make kind of a gray color out of it. Just put some shapes up here that resemble clouds. I come back with white and I'm going to detail these clouds as well as this wave. Start with a wave. The white coming over and there's a little wisp coming off the top of the wave. It's nothing more than rat tail strokes. It's nice and bright though. A lot of action going here, like this wave's really crashing. Remember, you get a lot of tip dry problems when you use white. Make sure you keep this needle clean. At about this point, you start breaking it up into a bunch of dots. A couple of these little wisps kicking off of it. And it breaks up into a bunch of these little dots. So the wave kind of crashes and bounces back up. A little underline, a little highlighting comes up on the bottom. Kind of adds thickness to that lip. Makes it look real thick. The wind's blowing and knocking a little spray off these big clumps of water. Little wisp coming off of there. Notice how I'm getting in real close and leaving bright dots, and I back away and I'll soften some things up, maybe some soft dots and some tight dots. Adds kind of a texture to it. Remember that there's lighting in this that you got to consider, and that's giving me the lighting. The little bright spots are where the sunlight's hitting the heavy pieces of water, and the dark spots below it are just the shadows of that water being in front of this area. The sunlight's not quite getting to that. So there's light and shadow in everything that you draw. You got to always consider your light source. Okay, show some motion of the water with these little lines that come down. Again, these are nothing more than the dagger stroke. Highlight the top of the wave. Since how the sunlight's coming from behind it. Show roundness by putting another little highlight across the center of the wave. And we'll put a little bit more of these wind wisps in. We'll highlight through the center of the wave, the face of the wave. A little bit of glimmer and glisten in the water. Just merely put in by representation of little straight lines. You can pick up a straight edge, lay it along the base of your wave, just spray lightly along it, and heavy right in the center. Usually that sunlight glistening across the water. Now let's go up here and work on these clouds while we still have white hooked up. Very similar to this, with one exception. Rather than a bunch of dots, it's a bunch of little crescents, about like this shape, if the camera can zoom in on that. Little crescent shapes. And once you get those little crescents working, you just back up and soften them up a little bit and then do some more. Remember, there's no definition or no rules to the shape of a cloud, really. You can make them any way you want, and no one can tell you that's not the right shape of a cloud. Never seen clouds shaped the same twice in a row. I never can seem to draw them the same twice in a row either. Just kind of go for it. But always keeping in mind where your light source is. In this case, the light source is right in the center of the painting. The bottom of the cloud, I like to trail it off as if the wind had blown up underneath the cloud and dragged some of the cloud along with it. It's another one of those dagger strokes, thick to thin. A graceful little trailing off is the most important thing to learn when learning to airbrush. Probably the most important things that you need to do, though, are always to be checking your air hole check the tip of the needle, make sure it's not got dried paint built up on it, and make sure that your airbrush isn't clogged. It's just not your fault in most cases. It's usually some mechanical malfunction. Troubleshooting is very important to learn. So once you learn troubleshooting, then you can blame yourself. Until then, always blame your equipment. Let's go back to painting. Anyway, I come in here and I'll keep working with this till I'm satisfied with it. But the main thing to keep in mind is remembering that if the light's in the center, everything to the left of each one of these little balls is going to be brighter. So you want to just brighten the faces up on them. Be careful not to overwork it and get rid of all the nice shadows that you left in there also, though. You can easily overwork it. But about right here, I'd say that's good enough. Move over and do the next one. Again, some more of those little crescents. You can combine dots, whatever you want. Just trail it off at the bottom. Notice how that distance plays a big part in making it soft or harsh. And they're close, you get a bright dot. Back up with the same amount of paint, you get a nice soft dot. The combination of those two things can really make some interesting effects. Okay, we'll put some little step clouds in here, little soft clouds that may be way off in the distance or up high in the sky. A little light right in the center here. Maybe even make it radiate like in a starburst. A real soft starburst though. Okay, now go to a little black, just to add a little definition to the base of this wave. I try to keep my use of black to the absolute minimum in any scene. You could actually use a dark purple in that area instead of black if you would prefer. Let's get this stencil out of the way now. Come back along, a little bit of white, brighten just the very edge of this shoreline. It's a big sand dune. Now you may live in an area that your beaches aren't as white as this, so you may want to maybe lighten this up with white just to get your lighting right, then come back in and tint it with some of the tans or brown colors at your area where the beach is. I happen to live in an area where the beaches are actually this white. I'm very fortunate. All I have to do is just color it in. That's how I'm putting some shape into this shoreline. Just makes it look like there's soft sand dunes here. Yes?
What about a beach scene where there's no beaches?
Okay, a beach scene where there's no beaches is what he was wondering about. I suppose that's very possible. California, the rocky coast and things like that. You might want to make just a jaggedy stencil and make rocks out of it. If there's just bushes and plants and things along the edge of the water, I say, like if you're drawing a lake scene, maybe you want to have some cattails and things like that. Just a black silhouette in the foreground is what I would do, of the shape of a bunch of those plants and different vegetations that's in the area. And I would suggest you cut that out of something like acetate and use a stencil burner, because you can get so intricate with little details. Looks like you spent hours of work on something when really you just blew a little black along one edge and it's done. Okay, I'll come back in here and I'll put a little bit of blue to help accent these sand dunes. And we're done except for putting the black silhouettes of what I use in Florida. These sea oats is what we call them. It's just a plant that grows on the beach there. This also is just a series of those rat tail strokes that we speak about so often, or flare. It's got a lot of names for the same stroke. It's just basically a thick to thin stroke where it trails off to nothing. You can call it a rat tail, you can call it a dagger stroke, call it a flare, whatever you want to call it. But it's the most important thing you'll ever learn in airbrushing. Oops, crash. That happens occasionally. When you crash, you know you're getting in there close enough, I guess. So this is just going to be a little bit shorter stem sea oat than the other one. That's another thing to think about. You know, when we're painting these t-shirts, we don't have any erasers. You can't get away with pulling out your electric eraser and just, like when you're doing an illustration board or something, you can sometimes erase your mistakes and start over again. With a t-shirt, you're pretty much stuck. You've got to make something of it. But if you just relax and think about it, a lot of times you can save your mistakes. Just like this right here. Sure, I crashed the airbrush, but just make a little bit shorter sea oat out of it. Maybe put a couple other longer ones here. Maybe one that crosses it, and no one will ever notice that was ever crashed. There are larger mistakes you can make, such as misspelling someone's name, but there's ways around that too. You can use an opaque color to put a different background behind the name, or you can just invent something to draw over the name. There's a lot of ways to fix mistakes. You just got to stop and think about it. Okay, what's a beach scene without a couple birds? So we'll put a couple of these flying mustache type birds in there. That's all you really need. That's what I would do on a black shirt for a beach scene. Now I'm going to flip this around and we're going to do that chrome script name. Okay, the name we're putting on this shirt would be Lindsay, L-I-N-D-S-E-Y, Lindsay. You should always check with your customer and make sure you're spelling your names correctly, because don't take anything for granted. I took it for granted one time when someone said, I want Joe written on a shirt. I figured it's J-O-E. Didn't even think that there could be another way to spell Joe. Well, it was for a female, didn't realize it. J-O was the name. So you never take anything for granted. So it's L-I-N-D-S-E-Y. Would I recommend displaying a black shirt? Yes, in some cases I would recommend that. If you're in, say, a mall location that but you're not busy all the time. Black would probably be a good thing to put up, especially the fantasy art, the things like for instance, there's an artist named Boris Vallejo, and he does some beautiful fantasy work, and his work looks good if you're going to copy his work to go on a black shirt. Of course, I'm not recommending that you copy Boris's work, but I'm telling you, it's that kind of a look that looks good on black. But be prepared that it's going to take you quite a bit of time to work on these shirts, and charge accordingly. Yes, I charge more for black shirts and sometimes as much as double. And I explained to the customer right up front the reason it costs more, because it costs you twice as much of your time. And your time is worth a lot of money. So make sure, if somebody asks you to do something on black that you know you could do half as fast on white, explain to them it's going to be cheaper if you do it on white. Okay, so I write this thing one time in the white, and this is what you get. At best, you get gray. I come back, and I'll go over it again. Not just once, but several times I go over it. While I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and fatten up anything that goes up and down. At this point, I'm going to go over to the heat press and set this. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to hit it one more time. Does paint on a black shirt wash as well as on a white? Probably better. And the reason is because you have to cake it on so much more, you know. So you're putting so much extra paint on there that it'll probably last longer than on a white shirt. No, I still heat set it at about 375 degrees for 30 seconds. It's about the average time for heat setting. Okay, we'll go back over here and let's go for it again. Put a little bit more of this white on there, trying to get this thing bright. You know, it's looking kind of white, but it's not as white as it needs to be yet. It's still got a lot of gray in it. And in order for this chrome to really pop, you got to put a bright white down. You'll find that this time it's going to snap a little better though, because the nap of that shirt, all that fuzz is laying down now. And the paint isn't soaking in as deep since the other paint's dry. We're painting on top of paint now rather than on top of fabric. Makes it a little easier. Okay, I think that's enough white for now, except for on this eye right here. We come back and we go to white, to black. And we're going to take this black, and in the center of each letter, we're going to put a little dot and a little fade down. Get my black working a little bit better here. And chrome, if you ever wondered what color chrome is, it has no defined color. Chrome is simply a reflection of everything around it. But in most cases, from this little black line down, you're going to get earth tones because it's a reflection of the ground. Earth tones meaning browns and things such as that. And usually at the top part of the letter, you're going to have the sky, which would be, of course, blues. Now, the exception to this would be if you wanted all purple looking chrome, maybe you use purple down here instead of the earth tones and still blue up here. If you want a red chrome, maybe you use red and pink down here and just pink up here. You can alternate the colors, but just make sure everything is complementary. So always a darkness somewhere along the center of the letter though, or at some point on the letter. For instance, if I wanted to put this little line down here low, I could do that on every one of them. It'd still look like chrome, as long as I kept everything consistent all the way across. I'm going to go ahead and outline this with the black while I got it hooked up, since I got it in my hand, and get it out of the way. All right, let's go down for the earth tones. This is brown blue. If anyone ever wondered what color brown to use, it's brown, it's kind of a dark brown. It's not working very well. There we go. Would that be a transparent? Yes, this is a transparent. And you don't need much. I've seen a lot of people overwork this and make it really dark through this section. Just a little touch of paint is all you need. Yeah, I missed a spot, guys. How come nobody reminded me? Just go ahead and take this brown and let it just fade right up over your black. You don't have to be too careful with it. Maybe go to yellow. Again, you don't have to be real careful with the yellow either. It's real transparent. If it gets on the black of the shirt, it's no big deal because you can't see it anyway. See how you can just slop it on there? Then I'll go to some blue. Do the top. This is a real transparent blue. I'll come back in just a moment with a little darker blue. Okay, little highlights here. It's usually real bright right through the center. And the thing that really makes people like it is when you put these little stars on here. Nothing more than that flare stroke. You might put one even coming right off the name itself. Maybe a small one here and there. And we're done. Well, thank you. I hope this helps you. And we'll be seeing you in future videos.